Now we move on to the main part of this opening Kyrie, the long fugal section. So Bach starts this with the instruments, and like the choir, these are grouped into 5 parts. Although there are more than 5 instruments, they are in 5 parts. So the first flute and the first oboe are playing together, and they have the material that the tenors will have at the very beginning. So we have this opening theme, which they play. And that is exactly what the tenors will have when they come in at bar 30. That melody continues for 2.5 bars, as does the tenors, before the second oboes and second flutes come in, and they have the same material that the altos will have in bar 32. And you'll notice that's the same basic fugue subject, and one is in the dominant key and one is in the tonic key, so the opening main root key, which is what happens first. So that's generally how the fugue subjects works in this movement. You've got basically pairs of entries coming, and then he works out those 2 ideas. So you get an entry for 2.5 bars, and then you get the same melody, a fourth lower in the other part, and then he does that for another couple of bars, and then he keeps going with various exploring those little rhythmic and melodic cells. So there are lots of things which will come back and again. We have this idea, very expressive idea, which is slightly reminiscent in pitch of that opening idea at the beginning. And then there are various other ideas. One very interesting one is this articulated and widely leaping idea. And various iterations of that which come, sometimes he just takes that in 2 instruments at once, like around bar 20 when we've got the woodwinds, the flutes and the oboes, doing these kind of those little ideas like this. And all these kind of ideas will come back in the vocal parts when they come in. Underneath this, there's this lovely chugging bass line. Again, it starts as you sort of fairly conventionally. Which is again very solidly setting up the key. But soon he moves into this kind of rolling sort of running bass line in quavers from bar 10. Which again is a very characteristic thing that runs through the whole movement. This runs then until the choir comes in at bar 30, and then exactly the same thing happens. We have the tenors, they have 2.5 bars of the main melody, then the altos have the counter melody, a fifth higher, exactly as the instruments did, and then they run for a little bit longer. There's a couple of bars extra before the sopranos comes in. The soprano ones come in at bar 37, and then 2.5 bars later, again in a pair, the second sopranos come in, and they're the sort of matching part there. Then there's quite a long time until the Bach plays around with those ideas for quite some time before introducing the 5th and final voice, which comes in the basses at bar 45. Basses are doubled by the violas and all the continuo instruments, the celli, the double bass and the organ, with this final sort of one feels a sense of completion when all the parts are now fully in. And then he runs that and has various entries of this new of this idea, notably the first sopranos at bar 50, with the sort of highest version of the tune when they go right up to the top A in bar 52. And then that gradually completes a section at bar 58 when we get this interlude idea begun by the tenors. And then that's answered by the other voices. And then we have more around bar 62. There's the same idea with the pairs of voices playing around with that rhythmic idea. There's 2 soprano parts in bar 62, and all the strings and the woodwinds doing this kind of thing. And there's other parts going on as well. That all comes to a close in bar 72, which is the end of the choral section. So why not have a listen to that section now?